Hello everybody, and today I'm going to be reviewing Digimon All-Star Rumble for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. Now before I start the review off, let me basically go into a little bit of background with me and Digimon. Now, I've watched Digimon for several years. I mean, the last time I watched it was a few years ago, but that's because there really hasn't been any new material of Digimon. And no, that new Digimon Fusion season doesn't count, because it was just a dubbed version of something that's been out in Japan for a while. But Digimon is weird for several reasons when it comes to multimedia franchises. For starters, it seems to go into hibernation, then come out, then go back into hibernation a lot. I mean, the last season of Digimon was a good example. I mean, that came 3 years after the season before that, which also came out several years before the series before that. And of course, after that series, that was several years before it was even dubbed and before a new series was announced in Japan. Now, of course, in Japan, it hasn't all been radio silence. For example, there have been several Digimon games released in Japan. Now, as a Digimon fan, I can say this. One of the things the series is not known for is the video games. The anime, on the other hand, is pretty high quality, reaching its peak at Digimon Tamers, which is probably the best Digimon series for many, many reasons. I could literally make a long video talking about why Digimon Tamers is not only the best Digimon series, but is also a good anime in itself. And it also helps that it was written by the same person who wrote Serial Experiment Slain, and that, well, a lot of stuff is actually explained in it, from the backstory to, well, even some of the more minor characters' backstories too. And nearly everything gets explained in it, from why the kids go to the digital world instead of the adults, to why the Digimon are designed the way they are, to why Impmon acts the way Impmon did in the show. Yeah, a lot of stuff in that show is explained, especially if you watch the Japanese version. And it has a really good story as well, especially during the second half of it. Now, of course, Tamers isn't the only decent or good Digimon season. I mean, I've heard good things about Savers, even though I haven't sat down to watch it all. And of course, I've also heard lots of good things about Adventure, even though I personally couldn't get into it. And of course, there's also Cross Wars, which was pretty good, especially when considering its demographic. I mean, I'd rather watch that, subbed of course, than a lot of the shit showing on Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon. But one of the things the series is not as well known for is the video games. You see, the video games really show the franchise's roots as, well, a multimedia franchise for kids. Nearly every Digimon game I've played, especially the older ones, have suffered from many issues, from poor gameplay design, to inconsistent difficulty, to poor graphics and frame rate, to not making very good usage of the license. I mean, the Digimon license has tons of potential in video games. I mean, Digimon Tamers was a pretty good usage of it for an anime, but yet no video game has been like Digimon Tamers gameplay-wise. Now, of course, I've not played too many of the newer ones, such as Digimon World DS, and of course the sequel to that, and of course the other sequels to that, such as the Cross Wars one, Lost Evolution, and of course Digimon World Redigitize, and the PSP ones, because, well, they have not been localized. While Digimon World DS and Digimon World Dawn Dusk quickly became rare DS games, the other ones, on the other hand, have not been localized whatsoever in America. And while Bandai has started airing the newest season of Digimon, or series, or whatever you want to call it, in America, dubbed of course, and while they've released the old seasons of Digimon on DVD, in America, dubbed of course, not subbed, which is a disappointment because I totally buy a Tamers Blu-ray sub box set. They have not, however, released any game in America, despite all that. Until now, of course, with their new, first, made-for-the-West Digimon game in a while, Digimon All-Star Rumble. Now, as you can tell from the title, and of course the title screen, the game is pretty much intended to be yet another sequel to Digimon Rumble Arena and its sequel, which were on older systems. Now, the first two games were Smash Bros. Clones that gained popularity for several reasons, mainly due to the fact that they were Digimon-based games, and the fact that they were Smash Bros. Clones on the Xbox and PlayStation 2. In fact, Digimon Rumble Arena 2 was actually on the Xbox 360 backwards compatibility list, so if you own a copy of that, you can pop it in your 360 with a hard drive and play it. But honestly, I never really liked Digimon Rumble Arena for various reasons, mainly due to the fact that the gameplay just wasn't as good as the Smash Bros. Series, which it was basically copying. I mean, Melee was a good game. And let's not forget that even though Smash 4 tried to be like Melee, it failed in so many ways that Melee was just a much better game overall than 4. But now that I've said what my thoughts on the franchise are, let's talk about the video game, shall we? So, Digimon All-Star Rumble, or Digimon ASR, as the Xbox 360 dashboard calls it, is a fighting game that, well, instead of copying Super Smash Bros. Like the last few ones did, even though it has a copy of the Super Smash Bros. Menu, it does copy, actually, Power Stone instead of Super Smash Bros. This time around, when it comes to gameplay, due to the size of the arenas and how they are designed. But first, let's talk about the gameplay modes. There are two gameplay modes in the game, Story Mode and Battle Mode. Story Mode is pretty much where you get to advance through, well, like, let's just say, dialogue with no voice acting whatsoever, as when you play this game, it feels like the game was a very quick cash-in made by Bandai to cash in on the remaining Digimon fans who were desperate to buy anything that has a Digimon logo on it, along with kids. And, well, it has the same generic tournament fighter storyline you've seen in every other fighting game. Now, I honestly didn't expect a fighting game to have a very good story whatsoever, but the fact that the game has no voice acting whatsoever just shows how small the budget for this game is. It's like the game had a very small budget and that the game was rushed out to make money. However, this is the first Western Digimon game to have Cross-Wars characters, as after all, the last few were made either in the Data Squad or Savers era, or before that even. But yeah, as you can see from these cutscenes, the game was made on a very, very small budget. But when you get into the gameplay, you actually start to see the problems with this game, and just how flawed it is. Because after all, this game is a mess to play, and I'll show you what I mean. So, when you start the game, you start to see just how graphically outdated this game is. In fact, this game gives Sonic Boom, Rise of Lyric, a run for its money. And yes, this is one of the better looking areas in the game right now. The game has two, areas in story mode. In fact, there are just two. There's these adventure areas where you jump around and run through the level, kill a few enemies, and then get to fight the enemy before you can, well, go on to the next level. Kind of like, you know those modes in Super Smash Bros. Melee where, you know how its adventure mode was, you'd run through recognizable stages, like let's just say from Mario or F-Zero or based off those games. Sometimes you'd have a unique battle and stuff before fighting Master Hand at the end. This game tries to be both like that and like Digimon World 4 all at once. You run through a Diablo-style beat-em-up level as the game chugs with a poor frame rate and graphics that rival Sonic Boom, Rise of Lyric on the even weaker Wii U console. And keep in mind, this is a game from 2014 on the Xbox 360. I mean, you would have thought they would have been able to make something that looked at least like Halo 3, considering now Halo 3 is a game from 2007. But no, this is a game from 2014, and in these open world areas, the game struggles when it comes to frame rate. I mean, it struggles a lot like this. I mean, it's just an absolute joke to play through, especially when it comes to the frame rate, because the frame rate is just terrible. One of my first problems with the games started before I even got into a battle. I started to load the game. Like, you know, I talked to the character, and the game started loading. And loading. And loading. And loading. It literally sat at this loading screen for several minutes. And then I was like, is my 360 broken? Is my disc somehow defective? Is my disc not working? And then I came to the conclusion, after waiting, like, I think 2 or 3 minutes for the game to load, that the game had actually glitched up and kind of crashed on me. The only way to get out of this was to go to the dashboard and quit the game, and then start the game all over again from the disc, where I had saved that, from the telephone booth. And then what happened was, after I went to the dashboard and I started the game all over again, the game surprisingly started up fine and loaded fine. Which I think is weird. Why did the game even have to crash like this? I mean, this is something that's entirely unexpected on a console game. This is something you'd see in a buggy port of a PC game. I mean, I honestly wonder if Microsoft stopped even testing 360 games before they released them. I mean, because I know they tested them at one point before they released them, but I'm guessing they must have stopped that if this game somehow passed through quality assurance with a glitch like this. But then again, Sonic 06 was released on disc too, so yeah. So basically this game is this. You go around and you just hit a few buttons and see who can nail themselves in the corner first. Because if you can't nail the opponent in your corner, you lose, and the computer will just keep attacking you with no chance to counter, making this game very, very frustrating to play. And to unlock more characters, you actually have to do this whole story mode as well. So here's the thing. You have to keep playing through these annoying battles just to unlock characters. Of course, the gamer score is really easy to get in this game if you ever wanted it, with achievements mostly being handed out for playing the same level and same game type over and over and over again. I mean, this is one of the easiest games to get gamer score on if you have a 360 and you found this game in a bargain bin for $3. The music might as well be very bland and generic stock music. Of course, the same could apply to nearly anything Western Digimon related. I mean, especially considering how the Japanese Digimon series seems to have an amazing OST, at least when you listen to it. Like, the soundtrack of that is pretty good. But this, on the other hand, has garbage stock music. I mean, nothing as memorable as, say, the themes you'd hear in the Japanese version. I mean, that was good. This, on the other hand, is just dull. Luckily, the 360 supports custom soundtracks, so you can freely use your MP3s to substitute the music as you want to, easily. All you need is a flash drive, or, well, any storage device, or a server hosting the music too. Just like Digimon Rumble Arena 2, the game suffers from another problem that game did, and that is most of the Digimon are from Seasons 1 and 2. There's very little from Tamers and Cross Wars, and nothing from Savers or Frontier, or even some of the more obscure forms of Digimon media such as X Evolution, that movie. And yes, Dorumon did appear in Digimon World 4, which was in fact released in America. The character models, just like the rest of the game, are pretty bland as well. I mean, even though this is a 360 game, you can tell there wasn't too much effort put into the texturing, for example, or lighting. I mean, while the models aren't the worst, and they could be worse, the problem is they just don't look that great, especially considering this is a 360 game at the very tail end of its lifespan. The levels aren't even that interesting either. They're just a bunch of generic locations. Now, the Digimon anime really didn't have too many memorable locations either, to be honest, except maybe in Tamers. But here's the thing. With Digimon, they could have at least come up with something more creative than these generic environments. I mean, these don't even look well modeled. They're just so generic because of how, like, badly the game is rendered. And speaking of bad coding, the game lacks online mode. That's right, the game does not come with any sort of online multiplayer, only local multiplayer. And this is on a system which emphasizes online as well. This game, despite being a fighting game released in an era where nearly every fighting game has online, lacks it. But it gets worse. When you do a 4-player battle, the frame rate gets inconsistent just like it does in story mode when you're wandering the area. Apparently, putting 4 people on screen at once causes the frame rate to get extremely inconsistent. This is on a system that can handle more complex games. This is on a system that can handle Battlefield 4 to some extent. And yet it can't handle a simple 4-player fighting game. Of course, on the other hand, I think it's just badly coded, too. I mean, look at these graphics, look at the lighting, look at how well the game runs. This game looks like it was designed just to make a quick buck and to exploit the brand name. That's all this game was made for. It's like there's no effort put into this game whatsoever. I mean, and you know what's ironic? Bandai Namco puts more effort into games featuring intellectual property they don't even own than they do their own intellectual property. It just says they don't give a shit about Digimon when it comes to gaming. I mean, even when they're making a game, like let's just say for Nintendo, which is also a fighting game, they have the whole Tekken team do it, but when it comes to this, they literally just rush it out. So yeah, all this game proves is that Bandai doesn't care about Digimon still, especially in America and the West, and that, well, they'd rather make cash-ins than a proper video game that isn't garbage. Oh, and did I mention this game was developed by Yuji Naka's development studio? Yes, the studio who made this game is run by one of the creators of Sonic the Hedgehog. That's all I have to say. Thanks for watching, subscribe for more.